Berlin, March 1943. Inside a dim, smoke-filled office buried deep within Abwehr headquarters, a man quietly known among his trusted aides as the conscience of Germany carefully unfolded a classified report. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, director of the Reich's military intelligence, had devoted decades to observing Europe through the shadowy world of espionage. He had witnessed the rise and fall of armies, watched dictators emerge and vanish. But the document resting in his hands that evening contained a secret unlike anything he had ever encountered. The report described an American factory, one allegedly capable of producing a 4-engine bomber every single hour. The claim seemed so outrageous that it could easily be dismissed as Allied propaganda. Yet the numbers aligned perfectly. The sources checked out. The facility had a name, Willow Run, and if the intelligence proved accurate, the consequences for Germany were nothing short of catastrophic. Canaris ran his finger slowly down the columns of data: projected output, workforce size, engine manufacturing rates, fuel requirements. This wasn't fiction, this was cold, hard mathematics. A completely new kind of warfare was taking shape, one where the decisive weapons weren't tanks or artillery, but factories and assembly lines. This, he understood, was a battlefield Germany couldn't afford to overlook. When Canaris shared the report with his senior staff, the room went deathly quiet. Some whispered it was impossible, others dismissed it as irrelevant. After all, Germany already dominated the skies. But Canaris knew the truth. He grasped that victory in modern warfare didn't belong to the most fanatical. It belonged to the most efficient. And somewhere in Michigan, efficiency itself had been transformed into a weapon. Outside these walls, the capital pulsed with confidence. Newspapers trumpeted victories in Russia. Factories pumped out Messerschmitts and Panzer IVs. The Führer promised a 1,000-year empire. But deep inside the intelligence service, one man stared into the future and saw the ending already written in blueprints and steel. Canaris hadn't survived the treacherous maze of German politics by trusting surface appearances. He was an officer of the old guard, someone who placed his faith in solid information, not ideological fantasies. While others celebrated German conquests, he spent his days analyzing intercepted communications, trade records, and industrial assessments. He recognized that the United States, untouched by enemy bombing and blessed with seemingly limitless resources, was constructing something vast beyond comprehension. His intelligence network reported from Sweden, Switzerland, and Spain, neutral territories through which industrial secrets quietly traveled. A Swedish engineer wrote about a facility assembling aircraft wings with automotive-level precision. A diplomat in Lisbon mentioned a conveyor system longer than a battleship. Every report, every coded transmission pointed to the same location: Willow Run, Michigan. Initially, the entire concept sounded absurd. Ford Motor Company, the builders of Model T automobiles, was now manufacturing heavy bombers. Each aircraft required over 1 million individual parts: spark plugs, hydraulic lines, oxygen masks, and Norden bomb sights. How could such a complex machine be assembled at the speed of producing a car? But that was precisely the brilliance of it. Rather than constructing bombers one at a time, Ford would fragment them into thousands of small, repeatable operations, each performed by workers trained for that specific task alone. It was industrial production distilled to its absolute essence: repetition, precision, and massive scale. To the Allies, it represented ingenuity. To Canaris, it spelled doom. He forwarded his findings to Berlin, marked as urgent. He cautioned that if Willow Run reached maximum capacity, it could overwhelm the Luftwaffe in under a year. But even as he drafted the warning, he understood the danger his words carried. In a regime that worshipped ideology above all else, logic was considered heresy. And in a system constructed on lies, truth itself was treason. When the intelligence report climbed to the highest levels of Reich command, it was met with mockery. Hermann Göring, chief of the Luftwaffe, brushed the papers aside with theatrical contempt. Americans? He scoffed. They manufacture refrigerators and razor blades. They don't build bombers. His subordinates erupted with approving laughter, and the matter was buried before anyone could dig deeper. But beneath that laughter lurked genuine fear, the terror of acknowledging that their enemy might have perfected the very thing Germany once prided itself on: ruthless efficiency. The Reich still viewed warfare as a contest of willpower, of blood, of destiny. Factories, manpower, logistics, these were considered secondary to ideology. They believed the German soldiers' fighting spirit could overcome any industrial disadvantage. Even Albert Speer, the Reich's Minister of Armaments, later admitted he was shocked by the data. If these figures were even half accurate, he wrote after the war, then Germany was finished the moment the first machine started operating at Willow Run. But nobody dared tell Hitler. Questioning victory was defeatism. Suggesting that America could outproduce Germany was unthinkable. So the report was suppressed, and Canaris's name was quietly added to the expanding list of men requiring surveillance. In the smoke-filled cafes of Berlin, officers raised toasts to victories that had already slipped away. Propaganda films showcased triumphant columns, pristine tanks, and grinning pilots. Yet in the secure back rooms of the Abwehr, analysts recalculated the numbers repeatedly. The conclusion never changed. The war was shifting from courage to capacity, and capacity was something the Reich could no longer compete with. Across the Atlantic, on the flat agricultural lands of Michigan, the impossible was materializing into reality. The Willow Run bomber facility, designed by architect Albert Kahn and funded by Henry Ford, became the largest manufacturing structure on the planet. It sprawled across 67 acres beneath a single roof, so enormous that workers joked about needing bicycles just to traverse it. To avoid taxation in 2 separate counties, the assembly line actually curved 90 degrees mid-production, a literal tax turn that became an engineering legend. Here, Ford's revolutionary assembly line philosophy was reborn. Each B-24 Liberator progressed down the line in synchronized stages. Wings and fuselage united in perfect rhythm, engines lowered into position by cranes that never ceased moving. By mid-1944, 42,000 workers flooded the plant. 1/3 were women, real-life Rosie the Riveters. Thousands were African American, many migrating north for the first time to contribute to the war effort. Farmers, teachers, and homemakers worked shoulder to shoulder, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The noise inside Willow Run was relentless, a mechanical pulse that beat in time with the tempo of war. The air carried the scent of oil, metal, and ozone. Every 63 minutes, another bomber emerged from the hangar under its own power, combat-ready. For perspective, German aircraft factories needed weeks to complete a single plane. Ford called it mass production for freedom. The Allies named it the arsenal of democracy. To Canaris, it was confirmation that his worst nightmare had materialized. Each new bomber meant another German city within striking range. Each factory shift represented another step toward total collapse. In the span of just 1 year, Willow Run manufactured more aircraft than the entire Luftwaffe could possibly replace, and there was absolutely nothing the Reich could do to prevent it. By 1944, the skies above Europe had fundamentally transformed. They no longer belonged to the Luftwaffe. They belonged to the endless waves of 4-engine bombers launching from England and Italy. The sound of their engines was the sound of inevitability itself. Operation Big Week in February 1944 provided the definitive proof. Over 6 devastating days, thousands of Willow Run bombers hammered the heart of German industry. Factories in Regensburg, Leipzig, and Gotha disappeared beneath towering clouds of flame. Aircraft production facilities were obliterated. Synthetic fuel plants burned for months. The Luftwaffe's losses were catastrophic. Hundreds of aircraft and irreplaceable pilots gone in a single week. Inside Berlin, panic rippled through the halls of power. Hitler demanded new wonder weapons, the jet, the rocket, the miracle that would reverse the tide. But miracles require resources, and Germany was running dangerously low on both. Canaris, now increasingly marginalized, understood it was finished. He had warned them when action was still possible. Now it was far too late. The Reich had been defeated not by superior armies or brilliant tactics, but by simple arithmetic, by one nation's factory capacity overwhelming another's delusion. When Germany finally looked skyward, the heavens were filled with the machines that arrogance had declared impossible, and below, the same factories that once ridiculed America's inferior industry now stood silent, buried beneath the rubble of their own disbelief. Admiral Canaris never witnessed the peace that eventually came. After the failed July 20th assassination attempt against Hitler, the Gestapo confiscated his diaries, evidence of his opposition to the regime. He was arrested, secretly tried, and executed at Flossenbürg concentration camp in April 1945, strangled with piano wire as Allied forces pushed deeper into Germany. Weeks later, Germany surrendered. The war that began with ideology had concluded with mathematics. The Allies produced 300,000 aircraft. Germany managed barely a third of that. Willow Run alone constructed nearly 7,000 liberators, more than the Luftwaffe's entire operational bomber fleet that year. After the war ended, Willow Run returned to manufacturing automobiles, its assembly lines humming with peacetime productivity. Today, it stands as an industrial relic, a monument to scale, efficiency, and unwavering determination. But its deepest legacy runs far deeper. It demonstrated that freedom's apparent chaos could outproduce tyranny's rigid order. That diversity, mocked as weakness, could become the ultimate strength. History remembers Canaris as the intelligence officer who recognized the truth too early, and Willow Run as the factory that ended the war before the generals even realized it was over. Because ultimately, it wasn't bombs or bullets that destroyed the Reich. It was the stubborn refusal to accept reality. And reality, unlike empires, doesn't simply die.